Hi and welcome to Power Play. I'm Mike LeCouture in Ottawa on this Friday. Tonight, reverberations from the resignation.
He said that this was a long-standing decision that I believe came to a head because of these Liberal tactics.
There's a new reality in the House of Commons as the math of a minority government starts to narrow. Matt Genereux was rumored to be crossing the floor, but now he's headed out the door in the spring, though. We'll have the latest on that. Plus, Liberals survived their second confidence vote on the budget.
Yeas pour, 30 trente. Nays contre, 307, 307.
Opposition amendments were defeated in the last 2 days, meaning the government survives for at least a week. Now, the countdown is on to November 17th when they test the budget before the House. What's the plan to get it passed? We'll ask Artificial Intelligence Minister Evan Solomon and Green Party leader Elizabeth May, who chatted with the Prime Minister last night. She'll also stop by. Plus, the Battle of Bay Street.
We're working to create the right conditions to get big things built in Canada.
The single most important thing right now for our country is to make life affordable for our people.
Prime Minister Mark Carney and Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre presented dueling economic visions a block apart from each other today. Our front bench will dig into the leaders' pitches for the Canadian economy. Today, we've got Sabrina Grover, Melanie Paradis, Carl Belanger, and Rachel Aiello. First, though,
He's been the victim of some of these Liberal source fueled rumors. So he made it very clear that this was a decision that he made some time ago to focus on his family.
Matt's been a wonderful colleague, and I wish him all the best. He's, somebody who served with him for some time, so I wish him and his family all the best.
Matt Genereux is a great colleague. I think he's well respected across the entirety of the House. He, I think, represents the way in which members of Parliament should act in this place. So I'm thinking of him and his family.
Look, these are very deeply personal decisions. What I can also say, though, is that teams function best on transparency and trust.
it was the morning after the surprising news. About 23 hours ago, Conservative MP Matt Genereux announced he'll be leaving Ottawa in the spring. Now, that's a significant move and a consequential one in a minority parliament where the Liberals are only 2 seats short of a majority government. Now, Prime Minister Mark Carney and Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre weren't on Parliament Hill today. Instead, they took their messages to Bay Street in Toronto to deliver keynote speeches. Carney was at the Canadian Club in Toronto, and Poilievre pitched to the Economic Club of Canada.
Our next tranche of nation-building projects will be announced next week, and we're creating new strategies, from critical minerals to high-speed rail, sovereign cloud, all to drive tens of billions of dollars in further investments while creating the conditions for a better connected, more productive Canadian economy.
This should be a nation where anybody who works hard can achieve their dreams, where we are sovereign and strong and that we can stare down tariffs from any nation because of our economic strength here at home. A nation not of gatekeepers and grandees, but instead a nation of entrepreneurs and explorers.
So 2 ideas there of how to move forward as a country a week before the Liberal budget will face another test in the House of Commons. Do they have the confidence of the House? And do the Liberals have confidence that they have those votes to pass the budget? Evan Solomon is Canada's Minister of Artificial Intelligence and Digital Innovation. Minister, thanks for being here. Welcome back to Power Play.
It is good to be here.
Given what has happened in the House in the last week, but also the votes on the amendment, how confident are you that you can pass this budget?
We want to pass the budget because we think it's the right budget, and we think it's the right budget for the right moment to invest in Canada. Look, it was good to see that we've got support for this budget. It's good to see that even amongst Conservatives, they recognize not only themselves but in their communities that this is a budget that's going to invest in their communities, going to invest in the country, going to invest in businesses, going to make this country grow. So, look, we don't take anything for granted. This is an important budget, but it was absolutely good to see that we had that kind of support.
But do you think you have full support? I mean, those were just the amendments.
Look, we don't know. It was good to welcome Chris into our caucus. That was fantastic. I think he recognized that this is a budget that's investing in the country. Like, I'll give an example. For him, in his riding, it's a rural riding, we got a $50 billion community investment fund. That's going to do a couple things. Build roads. It's going to build community centers. It's going to build rec centers. It's also going to put $5 billion in the hospitals. Look, he gets it. It's going to help build communities when they need it. My riding, his riding. So it was good to see that. I think people, like, more importantly, outside of the political intrigue, it matters. We want the budget to pass. But I think Canadians are looking at this and saying, it's a fair budget, it's the right budget for the right moment.
But not everybody believes that. There's a number of economists, Desjardins notably, they had said, quote, a missed opportunity and was more of the same. Why wasn't this transformative as it had been hyped up to be?
Well, I think it is transformative, and let me just walk through.
Economists
Okay.
aren't saying that, Minister, with all due respect.
I mean, there's lots of quotes that will say, wait, this is too much or too little, but what does it do?
I actually have more quotes that say that it's not enough, but go ahead.
Well, let's talk about it. I think we're making the biggest investment in a generation in our military. I think that's important, okay? I think we are making the biggest investment a federal government has made in affordable housing by standing up Build Canada Homes. This whole budget could be about making sure that there's affordable housing, that there's no GST on first-time home buyer. That's important. You could talk about the military. That's important. You could talk about the community fund. That's absolutely vital. You could talk about investments in tech. That's important. So I think whether you're an individual, a business, a community, or the country, the major projects that we're investing in, this is about investing will be what? $450 billion to unlock $1 trillion. That is sizable, that's effective, and that's real.
But by the same token, BMO has said that many of the measures in this budget were already known, so it's unlikely that it will cause a sharp revision of their economic forecast. So if it didn't move the needle for BMO, why is it going to move the needle for Canadians?
Well, first, why don't we look at things where the needle just moved? Like,
I know, but they're saying that it's not enough.
But let's look at
and
reality.
These are people who look at budgets for a living.
Let's look at numbers. 67,000 jobs created in October.
Yeah.
That's a real number, right? Unemployment fell. That's a real number, right? Lowest debt to GDP ratio. That's a real number. AAA credit rating. That's a real number. Investing real money in the military. That's a real money. Making the school food program permanent for 500,000 kids. Those are real numbers. So I think the first thing is, there's a lot of real numbers, and you got to invest. Here's the other thing. Politics is about choices. We're investing in the country, historic levels of investment, as we just talked about. No cuts to daycare, really important. Dental care, health care, no cuts to the transfers. These are really important choices. Okay, so we are protecting, ring fencing those services. It's really important.
But we were told there would be sacrifices, there'd be austerity, and I got another number for you, 1/3.
Sure.
In terms of the scale of savings, only about 1/3 of the cuts that we saw in the 1995 budget that was put forward by the Liberal government, which is being held as the standard as transformative. If there's only 1/3 of the cuts of what is being held as the standard, would you say the expectations were too high going into this?
I think we've got to be fair. You're comparing apples and oranges. Totally different fiscal situation under Paul Martin. The debt to GDP, just a second, the debt to GDP ratio,
but at the same
totally
time,
different, different choices.
But your Prime Minister went in this saying people will have to make sacrifices. Is 1/3 of the transformational budget that was in 1995, is that really sacrifices then?
Well, first of all, we're talking about opportunities and investment here. I think we got to focus on the right thing. 1995 is a different world.
But he's the one who set it up as sacrifices. It wasn't me. Those weren't my words. That was your Prime Minister.
Let's talk about 2025. All right? One, remember, in 1995, there was cuts to transfers to the provinces. We're not doing that. I think that's really important because this is a moment where Canadians want to invest in the things they care about: healthcare, dental care, child care. Those things matter. Then you got to make life affordable. So you got to invest in affordable housing. You got to make sure that first-time home buyers have houses, and you got to make sure you can build fast, right?
Yeah.
You can buy affordably, and you can live forever. That's basically what we're trying to push with this Build Canada Homes. So that's really important. Look, it's a new world. We got to invest in our national defense and our security. We're doing that. We got to invest in our borders. That's why we got 1,000, CBSA officers and 1,000 new RCMP officers. Those are real investments. And so, but it's how you invest. And I think this is something that, again, is important. First of all, you got to get investment in. So,
I do, and part of that's going to AI, and I want to actually circle in on your file here specifically. Your government has heralded as something that will help with a lot of cost savings in the government and making sure that it runs more efficiently. How much of the $13 billion in annual savings are going to be a result of the implementation of artificial intelligence?
Okay, so first of all, you're right. We got to save more on on our government, so we can invest more. I think that's fair. And I think we got to get more productive. I think Canadians kind of want the government to serve them better and more efficiently because they want to see more affordability. And so I was on the committee that went through the investments to make sure that we're investing in our public service in ways to make it more efficient. AI will play a role. But
how? I just want to, because I think a lot of people look at it, and look, let's be honest. Most people at home, they think of AI, they know what Siri is on their phone, but they want to know concretely how does that make government more efficient without possibly cutting jobs?
Okay, look, AI is a job multiplier. Just hear some numbers because I know you love the numbers, Mike.
Love the numbers.
800,000 people work in the digital sector, fastest growing job creating sector in the country, 150,000 jobs currently in AI. Now, we haven't even adopted AI a lot. We're trying to drive that. Remember, AI is a job multiplier. I know people are concerned about that. One of the reasons in this budget, we're investing in training, not just the 100,000 summer jobs for young people, but the 55,000 spaces for training. A lot of that will be in tech, but we're investing in that sector. And this is really important. We've got to crowd in capital so we maintain our leadership. One of the things that we've done that sounds nerdy, but this is the place to talk about it.
Of course it is.
Is the productivity, the super deduction for productivity. Now, this is like one of those moments where people can say, okay, what's the baseline? Given the current political realignment, which is the United States, our super deduction will allow us to bring our marginal tax rates, down to 13.2% from 15.6%. That is lower than it is in the United States, even after the one beautiful big bill. That means we have that is crowding in investment. And where is that investment going? Not just in our major projects, not just in our infrastructure, but also into tech, because we are a leading country in AI, a leading country in not just the innovation, but in our entrepreneurship. But we need to crowd in capital to build the digital infrastructure to make sure that we have these tools to serve Canadians.
So how does the implementation then go into that $13 billion in annual cost savings?
I will tell you, I am working closely with Joel Lightbound, my counterpart who's in charge of government transformation, to make sure that we modernize government service to make it more productive and make it efficient so we can save more, so we can invest more. Like this budget is really important. And your household, it depends what you invest in. The core insight into this budget, Mike, is that we're investing in capital costs. That means things like when you buy a house, the investment goes up. That's different than you buy new clothes.
I feel like you haven't answered the question of how AI is going to make government run more efficiently. Okay. And the reason I ask is because a lot of people have a memory of things, of technology being ushered in by a government, namely the Phoenix Pay system, and they go, well, is that what this is going to turn out to be?
So we've set up
because obviously, that was not something that went over so well.
Right. So, look, it's a great question about how this is going to function. We're setting up a new Office of Government Transformation. I will be part of that under the authority of Joel Lightbound. And I think what you'll see is, first of all, we've struck some MOUs, we've signed some memorandums of understanding with Canadian companies. The first thing is we've got to use Canadian technology. We've got to build up our sovereignty. We've got to move from a kind of reliance on other countries to our resilience, using Canadian tech within government, and we will be buying that tech. And of course, the Office of Government Transformation is about utilizing to maximize efficiency. Now, you're asking me what the exact savings are going to come when. The office has just been announced in this budget.
But you must have a rough idea if you've set out to do it this way. And an idea of saying, well, AI will save us money, you must have an idea how much you could save.
Well, we know what the savings are based on the forecasts on our budget. And I think what you're going to see is AI will play a role in it's not just the savings, which is going to play a role. Look, efficiency matters, but it's serving Canadians better. Like, I'll give you an example. Wait times, right? Wait times, whether you're for CRA, wait times in immigration. Those are the kind of ministries that are looking to use new tools to make sure that we're serving Canadians better. Like, this is outcome first. We need to serve Canadians better, so they spend less time getting passports or less time waiting for CRA.
So is that your measure of success? And the reason
that's
I say
one
that,
of them. Of course, there will be KPIs.
Or is it a
measures of
number?
success.
Or is it a number in terms of savings to make sure that you are saving the public purse? So is it a service-based, or is it actual a dollar figure that you're looking for?
They're both. There's going to be measurements
how much of each?
service. Well, every ministry. First, we've got to strike the office, and then again, Joel Lightbound's going to be and will be setting up the metrics. But absolutely, the metrics are going to be to serve Canadians better and to save money. Now, like you're asking about save money in the budget. You've seen that we are going to balance operating budget by 2029. So, I mean, that's there. We're still going to invest in capital, things that grow, things that we get return on investment, job creators, job multipliers, and we will have our operating budget balanced by 2029. And that is one way to do it.
And I appreciate that. I'll just circle back on this because you mentioned everybody's household, you have to budget, you have to have an idea of what you're going to do going into this. Well, if I'm making a budget and I'm going to bring in something new into my household that's saying that it's actually going to save me money down the road, I have either a dollar figure that I want to save or something else. Usually it's a dollar figure. So that's why I'm asking you specifically, how much money do we think that AI can save this government?
So, and I'm going to answer you again, it's going to be part of the solution to balance our operating budget. But I just...
So there's no dollar figure yet?
Well, there's going to be metrics when the office is stood up on that. But I just think...
How soon until that office is stood up, though?
Well, again, that's Joel Lightbound is the one in charge of that, so I don't have the exact date. I just don't want to give you information that...
I understand,
but let me just give you the bigger...
a couple months, a year, what are we thinking?
Let me give you the bigger picture here about AI, because I think it merits a bit of a broader moment, which is the government's got to also use the tools internally. We are going to also be making sure that we have easier to procure, so the government can procure from the private sector. That actually drives business. We've got a crowd in capital, but the point is that we need to build the economy of the future by making sure that we're investing in the tools of the future. AI is one of those tools, but we need the infrastructure, we need the sovereignty, and then the other last thing for my file, and it's really important, is the trust. Again, I've said that before the end of the year, barring the parliamentary calendar, I will be putting forward some legislation on privacy and data, because you can't really build the economy of the future unless people trust it. Their privacy safe and their data safe. That's absolutely core. But the budget is about building the foundation. This is the roadmap where we're going to go, but we got to lay the first bricks, and that is trust.
Okay, I got to leave it on that.
Thanks.
Minister of AI, Digital Innovation, also the Minister of Federal Economic Development for Southern Ontario, Evan Solomon. Thanks for being with us.
Awesome to see you.
Coming up, we'll look at the fallout of that Conservative MP's resignation, plus the sales pitch on the budget with our front bench. That's coming up just a little later on the show. Today we have Sabrina Grover, Melanie Paradis, and Carl Boulanger, as well as Rachel Aiello. First, though, the Prime Minister is still 2 votes shy of passing his budget. Will he reach across the aisle for some support? Well, Green Party leader Elizabeth May will join us next on what it would take for the Prime Minister to win her vote. Stay with us.
We are spending a lot less. Basically, we're stopping spending growth, but we are investing at the same time. We made a big effort, $60 billion of savings that we're finding in order to preserve what makes Canada Canada, the social programs, the federal-provincial relationship. So we preserve those, and we're using our fiscal room, our fiscal space to invest. And it is big.
So the Liberals have survived 2 confidence votes on amendments to their motion for budget support, but those were just the first hurdles. They're now just 1 week away from the big vote on the budget. Mark your calendars here. It is Monday, November the 17th. Now, the floor crossing by Nova Scotia MP Chris D'Entremont on Budget Day, that does leave the Liberals just 2 votes shy of passing the budget in the House of Commons. So could Green Party leader Elizabeth May be one of those votes? I caught up with her earlier today. Green Party leader Elizabeth May joins me in studio. Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you about an interaction you had yesterday with the Prime Minister right after the vote. I know that you've been trying to convey to him what you would like to see in the budget in order to gain your support. Were you able to do that last night?
Well, we're able to listen. I can talk to people, and I like people, and I've known Mark Carney since he was governor of the Bank of Canada. So it was nice to actually have a complete coincidental moment as he was leaving the chamber, and we ran into each other. And I said, I've been trying. I really would like to talk to you more. We've only had one chat, but I mean, there's intermediaries, there's people I pass messages through, but this was the first chance I've had since the budget was tabled to talk to him briefly. And I would say, it went well as a good start to, I hope, other chats and other ways of communicating. And I am living in hope that I can vote for the budget.
What do you want to see in that budget in order for you to vote for it?
Climate action and protection of nature.
Specifically, though, in short, I know, but what is lacking there right now that has to be in there to get your vote?
There's no mention of the Paris Agreement and our ongoing commitment to meet our targets, which are legally binding. There is no mention of our commitment under the Biodiversity Convention to a target that was named after the host city, Montreal, to achieve 30% protection of nature by 2030. No reference at all. So it was shocking not to see the references, but then again to the specific programs, everything to do with climate in that budget was a cut. So eliminating the Greener Homes program, eliminating the oil and gas cap, eliminating the standalone municipal urban public transit funds. It could go on. I mean, there was good news in the creation of a youth climate corps, but $20 million a year for 2 years is not more than a pilot project. So again, I need to see that our commitments remain commitments, because it's an obligation to the world. And specifically when the Liberals keep mentioning generational, there's generational equity, and we are not allowed as human beings to leave this for our grandchildren to live in an unlivable world. The planet's on fire. The budget doesn't suggest that it's aware, or that this government is aware of the urgency.
So I'm just trying to understand, do you need to see that in writing, that they're aware of it, or that the commitment is still there?
They're committed.
Because I guess what I'm asking is, how do you know that they're not still committed? Even if it's not in the budget, do you think that that commitment still lives on from the past government?
Well, what I would say is it's very clear that Prime Minister Mark Carney has wanted to distance himself from many things associated with Justin Trudeau. That's their business. They're Liberals. I'm not a Liberal. But I am concerned as a Canadian. We played a good and positive role in the negotiations. Back in 1992, when it was Brian Mulroney, we were in the lead on climate work in treaties. In the Paris Agreement negotiations in 2015, we were a strong negotiator for tough targets, and we have made targets that are legally binding. And you know, before the budget came out, people were trying to pin the Prime Minister down on, are you still committed to the Paris targets? And he said, I'm not about targets, I'm about results. Right. So I have to say, the answers have not been, I mean, I'll take him at his word. If he says out loud, this country, particularly in writing in the budget, we remain committed to the Paris Agreement targets, which are, by the way, Mike, not net zero by 2050. Net zero by 2050 is fraud. Any target out to 2050 is not a real target, and it's not part of the Paris Agreement. We are committed to reductions that make a difference to ensure that we keep the planet habitable and retain human civilization. I'm not a doomsayer. I'm one of the few that would still say, we got time. We can do this. We can avoid the worst of climate crisis, but we can't do it if we kick this down the road, and we certainly can't leave it for our children.
So if that commitment appears in an amendment, then you're good for this budget?
I'm not going to put myself, in a box, because I've given them some very clear ideas of what I'd like, but you're in the ballpark of what I'd like. I don't want to be too many people say I don't want to negotiate in public. I do respect the fact that we're having conversations, and you're in the area of things we need to see to feel that I can cast the one Green vote in the direction of supporting confidence in this government and in that budget. I would hope I'll be able to vote yes. Right now, I'd be a no vote.
Right now as well, the margin is narrowing in the House of Commons because of where votes are going or not going, and where MPs are going or not going. So you could be that one deciding vote. You've also said you don't want an election, but you don't want to abandon your grandchildren's future. So if that is the choice you're faced with this budget as it is right now, what do you do?
I do what I believe is the correct thing as a responsible grown-up for our kids and our grandkids. And I don't vote out of political expediency. I vote based on, no matter how hard it is, I'll vote for what I think is the correct choice for all Canadians. Canada doesn't benefit from climate crisis that we don't address. Last year it was $8.5 billion in insurable losses, and it's not going to get better this year, where thousands of Canadians had to relocate, some more than once because of wildfires. We have to be serious people, and we can address more than one crisis at a time. Trump is a crisis. The tariffs create a crisis. We can protect our economy, and we can protect our climate. So in some senses, the Liberals have the platitudes right. It's the details I don't like.
On the details, before I let you go, the government has said that their emissions cap, they're looking to possibly walk away from it in the event that they do have other measures in place that they say will essentially make it useless in a sense. When you consider that calculation, is that something that you can live with if they believe that there are other measures that will essentially leave it useless? Are you okay with walking away from an emissions cap?
It's not so much if they believe it. I'm agnostic as to measures. There's a lot of policies one could put in place to achieve our Paris targets still. What's important is if they're going to work and the government remains committed to the kind of political courage, political will that it takes to stick to a plan to ensure that we meet our Paris Agreement targets. That's what matters. And it's sometimes we've had leaders say we're going to do it this way, we're going to do it that way. Greens have remained flexible, willing to say, okay, we'll give you a chance to try that one out. But what we have right now appears to be not just walking, but running away from previous commitments and previous policies, and ones that make a ton of sense, like greener home grants, so people can reduce their energy costs. They talk about affordability, being able to get your electricity and your heating and cooling down to almost nothing through embracing renewable energy. Solar power is now coming in at less than 3 cents a kilowatt hour. People can put it on their own roofs. This is the kind of thing that makes sense, but is completely eliminated in that budget.
So canceling or not implementing the emissions cap is not a red, or should I say green line for you?
No, it's more about committing and being serious about bringing to the table all the ways in which we could meet those targets. One of those key things is mentioned in the introduction, but then doesn't have a solid commitment: a functioning east-west, north-south electricity grid that is 100% green and renewable electricity. It would bring down the electricity costs for every Canadian and work, but that takes not just having a bill that declares we're one economy. You actually have to work hard with each province and each utility and territory and bring to bear the efforts of leadership of a federal government to have a functional east, west, north, south electricity grid. It shouldn't be that hard. The European Union's done it with 23 separate sovereign nation states, and Canada doesn't. So there's things that would make it possible to believe that there's leadership in this country and political will to deliver for our kids a livable world. That's not too much to ask. And Indigenous peoples across the country are crying out for climate action. Communities, seniors, youth groups, everywhere I go, and I say, well, I guess I'm the last one who cares about climate. I was saying that on one of the buses around Parliament Hill today, and a security guard in a bus traffic corrected me and said, I'm scared to death. I care. You know, I don't hear, certainly in my own community in Sandwich Gulf Islands, voters there wouldn't have reelected me if they didn't believe that it matters that we not again have a heat dome where 619 British Columbians died in 4 days in 2021. We're still not putting money into adaptation. How do we prepare for climate change? How do we prepare for the things we can no longer avoid? And when wildfires are raging across Canada, and the best this budget can do is say we're going to lease 4 new planes for 4 years, nothing about a national firefighting force for training, for support for communities, for floods, for heat domes, for hurricanes, for extreme weather events. Didn't we learn anything from Hurricane Fiona? Didn't we learn anything from the kind of extreme weather events we're experiencing that are punishing to our economy, but traumatic for communities?
Unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it on that note. Green Party leader Elizabeth May, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Mike.
All right, still ahead, we're going to bring in the Friday front bench. Today, we're going to talk about those 2 big moves, which, did change the government's minority math. Joining us today are Sabrina Grover, Melanie Paradis, Carl Boulanger, and Rachel Aiello. There they are on your screen, and they'll be right back after this break.
He said that this was a long-standing decision that I believe came to a head because of these liberal tactics.
We have an important mission to do to stand up for Canadians, and we want people that are committed to that mission.
It must have been pretty damn nasty for him to go from being a newly re-elected Conservative MP to I'm not sitting here anymore.
This is someone who's known to be a very good person within his party, but across the aisle. I'm glad that he was a member of Parliament for 10 years. I wish him well on his next steps.
He's been a good MP, a good solid MP, great teammate. He supports this party. He supports our caucus.
Well, it says he doesn't have confidence in his Conservative Party and the leadership. That's what it says to me.
So that was just some of the reaction after Conservative MP Matt Genereux announced his resignation last night. Sources tell CTV News that the Edmonton MP had conversations with senior staffers from Prime Minister Mark Carney's office as recently as Wednesday morning. The Liberals believe that he was ready to cross the floor into the government benches, but some of those people also say that a source telling us that the Conservative Party officials made it known he would face consequences for quitting. Despite this, he posted to social media yesterday night to say that there had been no coercion in his decision to resign. Genereux says that he's leaving in the spring, and that does matter because it allows Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre to go into his January leadership review before the by-election for Genereux's Edmonton seat. All of this comes, of course, just a couple of days after the Liberals successfully brought Nova Scotia MP Chris d'Entremont across the floor on Tuesday into the Liberal caucus, to a hero's welcome, as you see there, and now into Liberal benches. There's a lot to talk about with our Friday front bench, so let's get right to them. Sabrina Grover was a federal Liberal candidate in the 2021 election. She's a senior advisor at North Star Public Affairs. Melanie Paradis is a former communications director to Erin O'Toole. She's now the president of Texture Communications. Former interim NDP national director Carl Boulanger is also here. He's now the president of Traction Strategies. And we also have CTV News national correspondent Rachel Aiello. Welcome to you all. Thank you all for being here. Sabrina, let's break this down and start with the timeline and all of the different statements that came out, because there were a number of them throughout the evening, and almost like to sort of copy what we saw in the House of Commons. There seemed to be amendments and sub-amendments to some of these, Sabrina?
Yeah, nothing says this whole act was not done under coercion, like a statement written that says this was not coercion. I love that kind of investigative journalism. But I mean, if you look at the timeline of these events, like, I think there's clearly something suspicious that happened, right? Like, Chris Workington was quoted in the Globe and Mail yesterday as saying that this move had been in the works since the end of the election in April. Well, if that was true, then why did Damien Carrick give up his seat in Alberta instead of Matt Genereux in Edmonton? And why didn't Pierre run there? There's just a lot of things that don't make sense on the Conservative side. And I think at the end of the day, it is all a cover-up to kind of like mask the toxicity that is oozing out of those out of those opposition benches. And one of the things that I think Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives now need to be really concerned about is if that loose, flimsy duct tape over whatever was holding back leaks and switches and crosses and whatever it was, that's now come off. And I think that Conservative benches tend to eat themselves alive. I think that there's a real dichotomy between, that old elected Conservative bench and this new set of MPs that might have a real loyalty to Pierre Poilievre. And in the background, Jenny Byrne is still hanging around. And that was annoying to Conservatives at the end of April, and I'm sure it's not welcoming to them now. So I think there's a lot that Pierre is dealing with, and I think this is just the start.
Mel, as the Conservative on this panel, I'm going to get to you, but I know that Carl also wants to address the coercion, and part of the reason is because I want to give you some time to gather your thoughts on this one. I'm pretty sure you're going to have something else to address after Carl says his piece. Carl?
Well, Mike, what is the first rule of Fight Club? You do not talk about Fight Club. And yet, here we are. He's talked about it. And I think it's unfortunate that we are in this situation. And frankly, Matt Genereux is a very decent guy. I like him. I think he was well respected and well liked across the aisle and with the other parties. But the allegations swirling around, and I've heard some pretty wild stuff so far. Right. It cannot just stay like that. I mean, I heard former Prime Minister Harper, Director of Communications, Dimitri Soudas, on the air talking about heavy arm twisting from the Conservative Party to force him into this direction. It doesn't make any sense, as Sabrina said. So I think you need to clear the air because, if this was blackmail, if there was actual blackmail, it's criminal activity. It's criminal code offense. You cannot just do that. Yeah. So we need to clear this up. We cannot just leave it like that. And furthermore, why is he resigning in the spring if he wants to spend more time with his family? Like his family doesn't want to spend time with them this fall or before Christmas? Or he has to wait the spring? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and Rachel, to that point, I mean, we were all sort of following the timeline yesterday. And then even some of the reaction that we've seen as well. And the to Carl's point of Fight Club, which I'm going to go ahead and assume is the coercion part of it. But it's kind of like if you're explaining, you're losing, right?
Yeah. Well, and also to the point of you're going to stay on until the spring. Sure, that buys Poilievre some time to get through the leadership test. But as we saw play out in the House of Commons this week, if they were kind of banking on Genereux staying so they have a vote on the Conservative side, another opposition vote against the government, that didn't bear out this week. Matt Genereux did not vote on the Conservative sub-amendment to the budget, a confidence matter. He did not vote today on the block amendment on a confidence matter. So maybe that is just circumstantial of this week. Clearly, he's got a lot going on. So we're watching to see how that plays out if he is back and voting with the government. But if he is just kind of like a lame duck MP holding on to that seat to save face for Poilievre, there's going to be some more questions.
Okay, Mel, you've had some time to think about what you want to say, and I have a feeling you have a lot to say as well. So I'm not going to just say take it away, but how difficult is this to manage when you consider all of those different threads that are out there and everything that everybody on this panel has already brought up?
Yeah, the speculation and the insidious nature of caucus leaks and caucus divisions are incredibly difficult to manage. And I know that really well because I worked for Aaron O'Toole. And we experienced this, a lot of this. I mean, there wasn't anyone who defected, but it's still a very similar feeling to have a kind of a two-front war. So on one hand, this is budget week, and you're trying to maintain the message track of the leader of the opposition, bringing an alternative to Canadians. He did a good job talking about that today in Toronto, trying to deliver that message and break through. But when it's a two-front war. When you're trying to do that while also reacting to a real challenge within caucus, with divisions, with mistrust. It makes it very difficult for the leader of the opposition to do his job, and it makes it really difficult for the party to be successful. I remember exactly where I was when I received a phone call from a journalist informing me that there was a letter that caucus had signed, that members of caucus had signed, to initiate the Reform Act against Aaron O'Toole. And in the days that followed, there were a lot of different stories about who was going to vote which way, And depending on who called them, it would be a different version of how they're going to vote. So I know how this can really erode trust within caucus. So I think it's super important for caucus to tighten ranks and for Pierre Poilievre to do whatever it takes to facilitate that.
So Mel, leading up to the budget, because that is not this coming up Monday, but the next Monday, what do you think, Mel, if you were advising Pierre Poilievre, what should he be doing? What should he be doing in the next 7 days?
I mean, if he isn't already, I suspect he probably is, but he should be calling down to every caucus member and checking their temperature and having a real conversation about what is it that's going on in caucus. Is everyone okay? Are there people who are on the fence, and if so, what do we need to do to improve conditions for them? What is it they want to see the opposition be pursuing in terms of policy agenda? I think you need to hear people out. And then you also need to let that happen at a caucus meeting so they can hear each other talking about what their concerns are, and have the leader really listen to that and reflect on it and respond to caucus.
Yeah, and Rachel, it's funny because it doesn't seem like time is on his side because, it's a break week next week. But it is pivotal that he does have everybody on side because you have the budget. And it's almost as if, I don't know if that was your sense, but you almost see Liberals walking around a little lighter these days because they don't have the numbers, but
they're pretty close. Yeah. So certainly I think the pressure is going to be on for the Conservatives to sort this out over the next week when they don't have to go into the House in a high stakes vote situation. But it is a question of whether or not there's going to be a drip approach here. I do also think that, the Conservatives just kind of went through the soul searching and Poilievre promised to be different. To Sabrina's point, saying Jenny was going to take less of a role. And the fact that we're, 6 months away from that soul searching and we're back to having conversations with MPs, but what more do you want me to do? How do you want me to change? Not a great spot to be in at this juncture. So it's definitely going to be a challenge for Poilievre to show that he has fully got everyone back on side and do it in a way that is genuine and not because, as some of the suggestions from sources have been, that you're kind of like striking the fear of God into people to stay behind you.
Yeah, Carl, what do you think he has to do in the next week? And how pivotal is, who shows up for that budget vote in 2 Mondays?
Well, I mean, it's not like there's any kind of indication that if they all show up, suddenly we have an election and the government's falling. So it's not that important. But what's important in the prize is the leadership vote in January. And what's happened this week was 2 huge blows for Pierre Poilievre's leadership. It's no question. I mean, you read the letter that Matt General put out. He's not talking about the great leadership of Pierre Poilievre in there. He talks about his great friend.
on both sides.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And he's talking about his great friend, the chief opposition whip. There are some question marks here, and we'll see. I'd be curious to see if he does call each MP and he asks them, should I step down? I mean, I'd like to hear the recordings of those tapes.
Sabrina, so how, to Carl's point, how does this sort of set up the longer term for Pierre Poilievre, where he probably does, have an eye on the 17th for that budget vote, but he probably has a couple of bigger eyes on January?
I mean, already, I think the process to get to January and the process that Pierre was taking to get to his leadership review was very odd. It's very unusual for a leader who is confident to be kind of desperately calling different people to find out if he's going to be secure in that position. And I think he's made a number of moves that demonstrate that he is nervous about that, right? I think back to the RCMP piece a couple of weeks ago. That's not somebody who is confident that they can talk about affordability and the issues of the day, namely Donald Trump and U.S. trade. That's someone who's afraid of what the base might do when it comes to his January leadership review. And, I listened to the speech that Pierre made at the Economic Club this week or today, and it was very 2024. Pierre Poilievre desperately wants this to be a Trudeau-era budget, desperately wants to be fighting a Trudeau House of Commons, and he's just not. And Mark Carney made this the least Trudeau budget ever. And so I think that there's just a disconnect between the reality that Pierre is living in, what it's going to take to get to January, and the reality that Canadians are living in.
Mel, you get the last 20 seconds here.
it's really hard to communicate effectively when you're in opposition and you are constantly just trying to respond to the government. And budget week is the hardest for that. I think Pierre Poilievre did present some good alternative ideas today at his economic forum. One of them was around cutting taxes on home buying, and I think that that's right on point.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there, and we will, of course, see you guys back next week. Melanie, Carl, Rachel, and Sabrina, thank you all for being here. Still ahead, what have we learned about the budget's prospects? Well, today's takeaway is just ahead. Today's takeaway is all about the federal budget. The government is promising to find big savings, more than $13 billion annually. But how they'll find those savings and where they'll find them remains unclear. I asked Artificial Intelligence Minister Evan Solomon how much Canada will save by implementing AI technology in government.
First, we've got to strike the office, and then again, Joa Lightbound's going to be and will be setting up the metrics. But absolutely, the metrics are going to be to serve Canadians better and to save money.
Okay, so it seems we're going to have to wait and see. We're also waiting to see if the budget will pass. The Liberals need to pick up at least 2 opposition votes or see some opposition MPs abstain. So what will it take for Green Party leader Elizabeth May to vote in favor of the Liberal budget?
There's no mention of the Paris Agreement and our ongoing commitment to meet our targets, which are legally binding. There is no mention of our commitment under the Biodiversity Convention to a target that was named after the host city, Montreal, to achieve 30% protection of nature by 2030. I need to see that our commitments remain commitments.
And the House is set to vote on the government budget and see whether or not they have that sort of support right after the break week on Monday, November 17th. Mark your calendars. We're going to have full coverage for it, as you know. Okay, time for one more break on Power Play. We'll be right back after this. And that is your Power Play Week in Politics. I'm Mike LeCouture. Thanks so much for sharing your time with us. Vashti Kapelos will be back right here on Monday. In the meantime, though, stay tuned because your top headlines are just ahead.